Welcome to the Next Level Dentist podcast. We have back with us today. This is part 2 of a 2-part series with Stephen Callis, who I'm incredibly grateful for. And as I mentioned in the last episode, Stephen and my wife and I have worked with him for well over a year. Incredible counselor, incredible spiritual leader, and has helped our marriage through probably the worst time we've ever had in our 15 years of being married. And what I didn't know was that he had a background in working with suicide and intervening, helping, supporting. And so when I learned this and realized, oh my goodness, this topic, I'm trying to figure this out on air. And anyone who listened to my previous podcast, Shared Practices, knows that I'm not afraid to learn on air, which is what we're doing here today. Is I don't know exactly how to help people. I've got a set of tools. I've helped in certain circumstances, but there's a whole lot I don't know. And so I want to welcome back today, Stephen Callis. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Richard. It's good to be here again.
Well, and I will tell our listeners, if you haven't had a chance to listen to that first episode, go back and listen to that one first. But today we're really going to get into some of the meat and potatoes of what do we do? How do we help? How do we, someone in crisis, whether they're dropping little signals about prevention. How do we help prevent them going to a darker place? How do we help someone in the middle of an awful scenario, and then afterwards? And I didn't even this last one, postvention. We'll get there in a minute, but I didn't even think about that. How do you help someone who has been suicidal but is not anymore? But now there is that Kyle Carnahan talks about the door has been opened. And so there is this like sense of things are a little different now after an episode
Where do we want to jump in?
like that. I'm really, you'll learn, I'm really bad at asking straightforward questions. So let's start with prevention. How,
Okay.
uh, how does one go about? I'm a dentist. I've had really hard moments myself and been in dark places, and I want to be able to recognize in colleagues, friends, others who are or who aren't dentists, and to be able to do something and to have tools to know what to do. So where would you start if you've got someone who doesn't have formal training but wants to arm themselves with the ability to help in a productive way? Where would you begin?
So, what I'm going to start with is actually technically not an answer to that
That's
question.
fine.
That question's almost like let's talk about intervention,
Okay.
right? But I just want to set a table with what we mean by prevention, suicide prevention, because that starts with just being conversant with what are called risk factors. Risk factors are not causes. Risk factors are not causes. People tend to not think about this, but they sent me to the training and they made me think about it. The reasons for killing yourself left in a suicide note, that is to say, the causes, really don't explain a whole lot. Even if they say, I did this because I lost all my money, I did this for whatever reason. So prevention isn't about reasons or causes, it's about risk factors. An example, if you're a practicing alcoholic, a practicing drug addict, that's a risk factor for suicide. We are not saying that alcoholism or drug addiction causes suicide. We just notice a correlation statistically in people who complete suicide. And did he have a longstanding alcohol problem? Yes. Did she have a drug problem? Yes. So drugs and alcohol are a risk factor. If you are between the ages of 13 and 19, or between the ages of 78 and about 88, you're in an age bracket that is a risk factor, because those are the two populations age-wise that are going to attempt suicide the most often and complete suicide the most often. We're not saying that adolescents or geriatrics cause suicide. We just know that there's a lot of going on in those stages, in those developmental stages, that can be a risk factor for suicide. Mental health diagnoses can be risk factors for suicide. The one, of course, that shoots to the top of the list is major clinical depression. Now, that's a little different than somebody who has a depressive episode. A lot of human beings can have a depressive episode, but some people really are born with brains that just don't get it done. And what I mean is neurochemistry, right? So if you could think about a diabetic as somebody whose pancreas just isn't getting it done, you might think about major clinical depression as somebody who's just not creating enough dopamine, just not creating enough serotonin. It might not even be their fault. But it is extremely distressing. The suffering of untreated major clinical depressives can go under the radar in a family for a long, long time. And you just might think, grandpa was always quiet, or you just might think your teenager's going through a normal stage of withdrawal and isolation. So you might not know that that's a risk factor for suicide until it's too late. And then other mental health features are various kinds of psychoses. Sometimes schizophrenics can be a risk factor for suicide, etc. So those are some risk factors. Now, what we're going to do next is move to intervention. And this is where lay people, if you will, people that aren't therapists, often say, what can we do? Well, this is kind of right between prevention and intervention. What we want to do in suicide prevention is really identify what we call the gatekeepers. And that is, who are the people in our community, in our society, that are most likely to be standing at the gate where a suicidal person is passing through? And immediately, for adolescents, we think of teachers, coaches, right? For geriatric populations, we might be thinking of a religious community, wider community, Rotary clubs, dentist organizations. Who might be standing at the gate? Who might notice something first? We equip those people, and anybody that wants to know, with a basic suicide assessment and intervention model. So, listeners, hold your breath. Here we go. We want to watch for really odd behaviors. And they'll come out of the blue, and you'll notice them immediately. They'll seem like, what? This doesn't fit. If you're 16 and your 16-year-old buddy that you've known since kindergarten, ding dong comes over and you open your front door and he's standing there with his arrowhead collection that his grandfather gave him before he died. And you've known this kid since kindergarten, and he's been so proud of this arrowhead collection. It's framed in his bedroom. You never go over there, but what he doesn't bask in this and how important this is. And just one day, ding dong, and he's got this thing in a frame, and he says, I want you to have this. If you're a parent eavesdropping on that conversation, or later, if your son comes in and you go, what's that? Well, Albert gave me his arrowhead collection. You might want to go, whoa. That's I want to ask about that.
Yeah.
I want to call Albert's parents. Did you know he gave the arrowhead collection? Is he feeling all right? Somebody needs to go in and see if Albert is feeling all right. When people suddenly and rather randomly start to give away prized possessions, we want to pay attention to that. When an older person wants to give away or rehome a beloved cat or dog, especially if they live alone, we might want to ask some questions. These are not threats of suicide, but they certainly can predict suicide. We want to ask some questions. The next thing we want to talk about is suicidal threats, and those come in two categories: overt and covert. Now, you wish that suicidal people most of the time would make overt threats. I'm going to kill myself. Because as scary as that might be, it is what it is. It's right. It's overt. It's on top of the table. Unfortunately, suicidal people more often will make covert threats. Yeah, Richard, this world would be better off without me. Seriously, man. Just like vague stuff like that. If I left this planet, I don't think anybody'd notice. Vague stuff like that. I've always thought the last thing that Vincent van Gogh said before he went out in that cornfield and shot himself, his brother quotes him as just looking him in the eye and saying, "This sadness will last forever." And oh God,
Yeah.
you just like,
Yeah.
brother, that wasn't an okay thing. Follow him out in the cornfield. You know, that's a big thing to say. We want to listen for sentences that end in categorical despair, like that sentence. We want to listen to themes of hopelessness and futility. And then a big one is we want to listen for themes of humiliation. Otherwise, normally mentally healthy people, um, I don't know, this is that pastor who gets caught red-handed stealing the church's money and gambling. He's got a gambling problem. And it's maybe been going on for about a year and a half, and he's managed to hide it up to now. But then, boom, it's all out in the open. And it isn't just a crime, but he is humiliated in his community. People who are humiliated, somebody might want to keep an eye on them. So what do you do when you think you hear a covert threat? Well, here's the first rule of thumb. We want to make the covert overt.
Okay.
We want to make the covert overt. And we do that sometimes with questions. Again, I'll go back to this world would be better off without me. And I don't know, if you're my friend and you say that over a beer, you're going to hear, so is that a fair warning? Should I make plans to be without you?
Hmm.
So now I just made that overt, right? I just made that overt. And when you do that, you should expect defensiveness. What are you talking about?
I was gonna say it feels like that would immediately backfire and cause them to like bury it.
No, but they didn't bury it. They got caught. And if they need to save face by being mad at me, I'm just going to sit there and say, "You said it, dude. What do you mean the world would be better? You did a research paper on it. You did what is the evidence?" I'm going to push back. I'm going to be. I didn't start this conversation, dude. You're the one that said it. I'm going to make it overt every single time. If I left this planet, I don't think anybody'd notice. I might say, it isn't ironic that you're announcing to me, who's loved you for these last 25 years, you're announcing to me that no one's going to notice. Do you know that I noticed what you just said? I'm sitting right here and I notice. Again, I'm making it overt. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Clearly, you want me to notice something. I'm going to tell an actual story back in the crisis hotline, and it's the stuff of stand-up comedy, but this was real. This was real. This was a way to make the covert overt. Crisis line rang. I was on it. Hello, unpack Suicide Prevention Center. I'm going to kill myself. So it was an overt threat, right? I said, I'm so glad you've called. You'd called just the right place. There's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do to stop me. I'm going to kill myself, and there's nothing you can do about it. And literally, here's what I said. Well, you're right about that. You're right. I have no power at all to keep you alive. I do have a question, though. The Phoenix phone book's a pretty big, thick book, 2.5, 3 inches thick, and you could have called Taco Bell. You could have called Applebee's. Do you know that you've called the suicide prevention hotline? I mean, isn't it at least ironic that of all the places you could call to announce that you were going to kill yourself, there's nothing anybody... I don't know. This is what we do down here. 24 hours a day, we prevent people from killing themselves. Is it an accident that you called me? Long pause. He called me a terrible name, but we saved his life that night. So I'm saying sometimes making it overt, we should get ready for defensiveness. We should get ready for all kinds of pushback. But the minute we make it overt, we win.
I want to go back to this, Stephen. Yeah, I mean, of all the people for them to get, was everyone as sassy as you were on the suicide
Oh yeah.
hotline?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And why? Because I'm not being judgmental. It's just a fact. Suicidal people are choking to death on their own egos.
Mm,
Now listen to the ego in this. I'm going to kill myself, and there's nothing you can do about it. All right. So why would you announce that then? What you
right,
would think, you'd be out by the train tracks or on the 10th floor of a balcony. I don't say that for God's sakes, but I mean, hear it, and there's nothing you can do about it. So what did you get out of announcing that
right,
before you?
right.
Okay. This is not an accident. There's a great Freudian quote that's just true. And if you disagree with Sigmund on this, you're going to be wrong. Here it comes. The consequences of our actions tend to reveal our motivations. Now, what are the consequences of calling a hotline? Well, you're going to have your phone call traced. The police are going to show up at your door. If I have any chance at all, I'm going to do everything in my power to save your life. You must know that. You didn't call Taco Bell. They wouldn't know how to do that, right? If 100% of you wants to be dead, you're not calling me. But if 91% of you wants to be dead, but some 9% of you is trying to hold on, you might call me and feed me a crock. I'm sorry about bleh, right?
Yeah.
And we would sometimes just kind of expose that.
Well, so this is because my mind is processing all of this to separate the goals of the suicide hotline. Number one, it seems like you'd want to keep them on the line long enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and number two, if you're a trained therapist and you've helped people through this a lot, you're going to have a lot of tools and ways to like get past the BS.
Mm-hmm.
The layperson version of this, like I can imagine that feeling very intimidating to do because you wouldn't have the tools to get past people's BS. But the making the covert overt is the thing that, okay,
You can do that.
we can do that.
Yep, absolutely. And it's because it's unlikely. The hotline story is probably never going to happen to a layperson. When a layperson picks up behaviors or covert threats and makes them overt, this is almost always going to happen with a colleague, coworker, family member, buddy, longstanding friend. Um, um, he might say, a friend of yours might say something about somebody who did die or did kill themselves. They might say, sometimes I'm just jealous of them. Again, a covert threat. Mm-hmm. And so we just make it overt. Now, here's the ultimate way to make it overt. When you can't think of any other question, you can ask this question. And I want your listeners not just to hear the words, I want them to listen to my tone, my affect, and my countenance. I'll do this. Are you going to kill yourself tonight? Now, see, it's not, are you going to kill yourself tonight? It's not that, right? See it
Yeah.
again?
Yeah.
It's a straight up question. Are you going to kill yourself tonight? Now, if they go, no, here's what I'm going to do. I'm relieved. Thank you. I'm really glad. You're a mess right now, aren't you? And then we're just going to shift gears to a more supportive conversation. We're going to resource them. Do they have a therapist? Do they have a pastor, a priest, a religious leader? Do they have the support they need? Are you going to kill yourself tonight? Thinking about it. And then I'm moving to, then it's an honor. I'm glad we're talking.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know why you decided to share it with me, but I got it. I got it. Now, one more thing I want to say to the layperson. When you think about why people kill themselves, they'll say all kinds of things, but I can virtually promise the layperson that what is really going on is a lot of undigested anger. A lot of us think that major clinical depression is a consequence of anger. that we're holding down. And I think I might have mentioned this in the first podcast. The ultimate deflection of anger is homicide. The ultimate retroflexion of anger is suicide.
Hmm.
It's really the same energy. It's really the same energy. And the minute I can get, now this is not the layperson anymore, but the minute as a clinician, if I can get them a little bit mad at me, I promise you they're almost always going to be less suicidal. If I can get them to be a little bit mad at their mom or their dad or their wife or the husband that cheated on them or the bully on the playground or whatever, right? If I can get them to deflect that anger instead of retroflect it, we're going to have more time to be together.
Hmm.
Now, back to the layperson. 1, we want to make the covert overt. Now I want you to remember this formula. Plan, means, intent. Plan, means, intent. You going to kill yourself tonight? I'm really thinking about it. Listen to the way I word this question. So, how would you be dead? Now, I ask that question in a deliberately ambiguous way because what I want is what?
Yeah, it made me like, oh wait, are they asking? How is he asking? Like, how does being dead work, or what is the tool? What is the way? Like, it's a little confusing.
And I'm going to look a little befuddled. How would you be dead if you killed yourself? What's the plan? What's the plan? Is there a rope, a knife, cyanide poison? What's the how will you end up dead? Now, here they're going to say this maybe. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far. Now I'm still concerned, but I just bought some time.
Hmm.
So they're ideating about suicide, but there's not yet a plan. If their answer is, yeah, I went to Home Depot and bought 10 yards of rope last week and it's out in the garage, I know how to make the knot. If their answer is, I got a 38 in my top sock drawer, it's been there for a long, long time. Oh, yeah, it's loaded. Don't even bother to ask. It's loaded. If I say, how would you be dead? And they go right to a specific plan, now I'm much more anxious.
Yeah.
I'm much more concerned because now not only are they feeling suicidal or have suicidal ideation, now they have a plan.
Hmm.
Plan means. Do they have access to the plan? If I say, how are you going to die? I think cyanide. Do you have any cyanide? No. Do you know how to get cyanide? Actually, I don't. I was wondering. I look online. Maybe I don't know. I don't know how you get cyanide. Now I've bought some time again.
Right.
Right. I'm gonna hurl myself out of an airplane. Do you know any pilots? Do you know? Okay. If somebody has a plan, but the plan is kind of preposterous,
Right.
I'm still concerned, but I've bought some time.
Well, the two examples you gave earlier of the pistol in the drawer and the rope, those were both plan plus means.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
Okay.
So he's strike 2, right? Intent. Are you going to kill yourself today? And if I get a non-answer or a no answer, then I might also have intent.
Hmm.
And then you win. Please, I don't mean to make a joke out of this, but you win a trip to the hospital, right? Because that's when I'm going to call for what's called a welfare check. Now, if I'm a layperson, that's really my only choice. I'm literally going to have to call to I'm going to say, excuse myself, I got to go pee. I'm going to call the police. They're going to come to the bar. I just made up a story that you met your friend at a bar. I don't care.
Right.
And you use the phrase welfare check. I don't know any state in the union that police would not understand what a welfare check is. I'm sitting with my friend. He's a little bit drunk. He is threatening suicide. He has a plan. He has means. He has intent. I need some help. And uniformed officers will come and, with his permission or against his will, drive him to a local mental health clinic or a hospital. State to state, the language is very different, but they will hold him for observation for anywhere from 1 to 3 days. But that's if they're 3 for 3, right? If they give me any opening, plan means intent. If they give me any opening, I'm going to put off incarceration for as long as I can.
Right.
Because that comes with a lot of other public humiliation. If you leave me with the choice of watching you be dead or, no, don't tell anybody. Lay people, listen to me carefully. If somebody that's suicidal says, I'm suicidal, but please don't tell anybody, I'm sorry, I can't even keep a straight face. I need you to imagine sitting in that church or synagogue or mortuary chapel. I need you to imagine sitting there in front of a casket, knowing you were the one who knew about this, right? And that should just freak you right out, right? We don't keep promises for evil. We don't. We don't. We do this in our prevention training with the youth a lot because we know in the research that if there's a high school kid that's in trouble on a campus, I promise you at least one other student knows. They talk to each other. They won't talk to their parents, but they talk to each other. So we go in and do training in high schools. We call it peer counseling, but we tell them, if your best friend since kindergarten walks up to you and says, hey, Phil, if I tell you a secret, you promise not to tell anybody? And Phil goes, yeah,
Yeah.
Well, I sneak out at night and kill babies. Thanks for listening. We literally do that role play and let the kids kind of giggle and laugh through it, And I might, and sometimes in the role play, the kid will go, well, wait. Wait. What I said is that when somebody's in an ego posture, like a suicidal person is, they will use some of your best qualities against you. You've just been had. Your very loyalty is about to be exploited. Please don't tell my parents. And we tell the kids, smile, nod, and say, I promise. And then the first chance you get, go find a teacher, the principal, and you tell. We call it one competent adult. And if you lose that friend forever, if that friend decides to hate you in the yearbook, you're told on me, right? You say, okay, fair trade. It doesn't matter because I'm not going to be complicit in this. So
before we get to post-pension, and maybe there's a lot more here or not, but the thing that all of this, I'm thinking about this in the context of dentistry and medical professionals, health professionals, like we're really good at putting on a face and going to work. Doesn't matter how you feel. Doesn't matter how strained the business is, how strained your marriage is, how you're coping on the inside. You got to show up. You put on the smiling face. You perform the song and dance. You take care of your patients. And because there is a sense of, I talked with a dentist 2 weeks ago who said, I'm incredibly anxious in my practice all the time. I know that the world's not falling apart, but just the stressors and the strain, I have anxiety and it manifests as a practice owner more than it did in any setting previously in my life, just because of the potential things that can go wrong. And he told his brother about this, who has a handyman business. And he goes, what do you have to complain about? Like, you're a rich dentist with the family and the practice and the house and all the things. And so very quickly, between family members not being able to relate to the problems of being a clinician and entrepreneur, other dentists, when we get together, we want to talk clinical, we want to talk vacations, we want to talk how successful our practices are. And that's what on the Facebook communities, the dental Facebook communities, it's always kind of this measuring stick game. And it's almost difficult because we get so good at hiding to like even see those breadcrumbs. And I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, I really, really do. So I'm going to pretend you're that dentist. I'm another dentist. And I went through Stephen Callis' training. I don't mean to sound presumptuous, And so I just heard the speech about anxiety. And I might. say this. I might say, I'm gonna pretend it was you that did it. So here
Yeah.
goes the role play. So Richard, more and more you're talking about how you're anxious and super uncomfortable in your role. And I really want you to consider that when a super bright, super talented, super successful guy starts complaining chronically about being super bright, super talented, and super successful, there's a pretty good chance there's something else he needs to complain about.
Hmm.
I want you to take me seriously. I want you to go sit down with somebody and see if you can find the something else.
So, because right there, that was an invitation to get therapy, to get help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if you ever. I don't know if you know this, Stephen. There is a resistance of people to get help and to reach out to therapists. I don't know if you knew that, being a therapist and a counselor. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So if
I'm
I'm
being
if I'm just your dentist buddy, if I'm your dentist buddy, not a therapist, right? And you've said this to me, and I knew to say that to you, and I saw you make that long pause, like nowhere to go, right?
right.
And then if you said, "Oh, therapy's a crock,"
Right.
or I don't have time for that," I might push on. I might say that part's none of my business, but you do have time to complain to me. And dude, I'm not complaining about you complaining to me. I'm your friend. I'm your colleague. I've known you a long time. I love you. I'm right there for you. But it is my job to ask you to consider, well, I'll just say it. I don't believe you.
Hmm.
I don't believe the biggest problem in your life is that you make a lot of money and that you're super successful and super talented and just generally awesome. I don't mean to make fun of you, but I don't really believe that that's your hardship.
Well, and I don't think that those who are suffering within dentistry do complain in that way. I do think that there is a lot of things that very much do come up in terms of team members, patience, overhead, pressure, all of that. Um, but I think what you're saying is, or at least what I'm understanding, is to just notice, is there a layer underneath here
Hmm?
from what they're saying, what they're talking about? Is there another layer that I'm missing or that they're not opening up about?
Almost certainly, because I'm going to press on, right? Um, yeah, being an entrepreneur of a huge practice, even a moderate practice, I'll bet it comes with all kinds of things you got to monitor, keep an eye on, all kinds of headaches. I wouldn't say it this way because I don't feel harsh and I don't want to be harsh. That's what you signed up for, and if you hate it, I would recommend quitting. But before you do that, I'm asking again, this energy it takes to run this practice is something else pulling that energy away,
Hmm.
is something else draining off that energy. Dude, I've known you in this practice. You bought that practice 5 years ago, and for the first 3 years you were like a kid with a lollipop. I've never seen you so happy. And I don't, I guess I just don't believe now suddenly the practice is your enemy. I doubt that the practice is your enemy.
Hmm.
What's going on with the wife? What's going on with the family? What's going on with your health?
Yeah.
What's going on with your memories about your childhood? What's going on? Dude, it's time to sit down with somebody and say, I am restless. I'm unhappy. I'm resentful. I'm flat. Life is not very interesting anymore. I don't know why. That's another way to make it overt, by the way. And you're right. The last part of this intervention is resourcing. Does anybody else know you're feeling this way? Does your wife know you're feeling this way? Why doesn't she know you're feeling this way? Um,
Hmm. So you want to get a feel for
Community support.
who else knows, who else are they talking to, who else kind of knows the depth of the pain. Um, because and if so it turns out like if you're the only one, then that's where you're going back to, what you just said of maybe it's time to like talk to someone and actually address this.
And depending on how many of those other boxes they checked earlier, I will say in a pleasant tone at the end, they won't like it, but I'm not going to be the only one that knows this. If you want me to keep being part of your support, I need to know that by Sunday you'll let your wife know.
Hmm.
Boom. That's just the rules. Or else what? Or else I'm going to call her and tell her.
Because I care about you too much.
But I'm not going to carry this alone. That's not. We need at least two people to know.
Hmm.
At least two.
Okay.
Suicidal people don't mean to be atrociously manipulative, but they really are. And so without judgment or anger at them, because that's just part of the crisis, right? You've just got to be aware of how you can kind of get maneuvered.
Hmm. It's so interesting because I liken to the idea that this is forgive my analogy here. Most people only buy one dental practice, and so you don't really get good at it. You
Mhm.
do it once, you don't know what you're looking for. You buy the one that you went, your neighbor dentist that you went to your whole life, and you don't have criteria for evaluating or any of that. And that's what I podcasted about for years. Um, I think also people don't usually get a lot of attempts at handling this. And so there is a natural inclination to just kind of like hook on to whatever they're saying and just kind of sink in deep and not know what to do and believe everything at face value, um, and not feel comfortable pushing back in any way or, um, I don't know, kind of establishing some healthy expectations or boundaries there.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't. I cannot say that I am privy to a particular research progress around project around dentists. I know that some vocations have a increase of suicidality and completed suicide. Dentist is one of them. I've always been curious about that. Police officers kind of doesn't surprise me.
Hmm.
They're kind of right up there. Um, but I don't exactly know what it is about dentistry as a vocation or a field. Um, Let me ask you, you're a dentist. Do you think in the collective, I mean, not you, but do you think dentists demean themselves? They're not like, I'm not quite a doctor, or I don't have quite the cachet of other people in the medical community. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's absolutely a thing where, um, it's not this world of like nurses versus doctors. It's like, yeah, you're a doctor, but you're not a real doctor. Like, you're not the one who's going to raise your hand on the airplane and go administer CPR, even though you could. You've been trained on it. And I don't want to be the person. Like, I don't know how to intubate someone. I don't know how to do advanced. I've done the training on advanced, past CPR, but it's been a long time. I do think some of the risk factors, and as I've looked into this, some of the risk factors include like perfectionism. Like, that is one of the traits that if someone has, they're more likely to, um, be at risk of suicide in their lifetime. Um, and my current understanding, and that's what I'm trying. I need to find someone who's maybe done research within dentistry on this. Is that it's this facade of like you talked about humiliation earlier, of like you have not been given permission to complain because on the surface your life is really good and you've got access to resources, to people, to status, but behind the scenes, um, you might not be coping well. Your marriage, all these other things, addictions, you're not allowed to kind of have those as a professional, as someone who's taking care of patients. But then as well, being a business owner, the financial pressure, the financial stress, and not having a lot of training in that or experience in that. Um, there's a lot more direct access of a patient to a dentist that if a dentist, I mean, I was in a conversation with a dentist earlier today who is being sued by a patient. And there's not like barriers of hospital administration between you and them. And very much so, there's a huge risk of your whole practice reputation could be tanked by a case, by a news article, by bad reviews, all of that. And so um, there's a lot of those things in there, and as well as medical professionals, I think, understand just a little bit better. You talked about on the last episode um, that men are more likely to complete suicide. I think I've seen that medical professionals in general are also more likely to complete suicide. We just have an understanding of anatomy and the human body and what kills you and what doesn't kill you. And so if someone is going down that route and they have all these other factors in line, they're more likely to carry it forward. But I don't know. It's all speculation. But I think the approach that I have taken is vulnerability, and there's almost this of like, yeah, no, I've actually been there. I have been there, and I've had thoughts. I've had if we go down the checklist, I've had the intent, but the beginnings of a plan, and I've never had the means. Um, that's as far as I've gotten down. But just by saying that, then if I'm in a setting of other male dentists, um, I mean, this is 3 weeks ago in Tampa. Multiple people in the room had various levels of those things as well, and it gave them permission to be able to talk about it. And there's also the flip side of that is you don't want to like glorify this or just talk about it more just for the sake of attention or talking about it more. Um, but that is something I'm actively trying to do for especially for
So
men in dentistry.
let's go back to something that you said. On the surface, it's all success and bright lights, and why would you complain? We're not allowed to complain. I want to be super clear that I didn't say you're not allowed to complain. What I said was when you're complaining about what is arguably the normal push and pull and the stress and the human foibles and the human condition of trying to keep a practice going.
Yeah.
And if you're complaining in a chronic fashion about that, all I'm saying is that it's super likely that what you're complaining about, the fact that you're complaining so much, has to do with losing resources, losing psychic strength. I'm saying after you stop complaining, these ugly things will still be going on, right? And you'll still wish they weren't, and they'll still make for hard days, but they won't be crushing you anymore.
Hmm.
You won't be surprised by them. You won't be reacting to them like, well, how did that happen today? You'll be like, of course that happened today. That's how insurance companies work or whatever, right? No, that's all I'm saying. I'm never gonna like judge somebody for complaining, but I am gonna say that's what this is like, and you've been complaining a lot about that. What are you not getting? Like, what's not filling you back up? What's
Yeah.
not making you ready to face another day?
Well, and this is now where looking at burnout, in my mind, burnout is this chronic exceeding of your capacity to bear stress to the point
Yes.
where your capacity begins to decrease. So what was bearable before now feels crushing, and the coping becomes more unhealthy. The redlining gets worse, and over time, you're getting closer and closer to that edge where one more thing that goes wrong or blows up in your life puts you in a much darker place than you would have been before. And I think there's a lot of that goes on that, at least in my experience, if you pair that with feeling trapped, I'm trapped by I went to dental school for however long, and I've got these student loans, and I've got this practice loan. We've got a lifestyle. We've built up expectations around my family, our home, all these things. If I stop, our whole world implodes.
So right there is the first seeds of the anger that I'm going to try to smoke out. Like, even as you made that presentation, in my gut, I was like, so whose expectations are those? Whose voice are you talking about or answering to? Is it yours? Is it your wife's? Is it your perceived expectations from your children? Was your father a dentist? I've got all of this now and it's too late for me to change my mind. You hear the anger in that?
Mhm.
The sense of resentment in that. And even if the person I'm talking to later, we decide, trapped himself for the most part, right? I want to get this anger up and out. I almost want to hear him use the F word in a sentence and see if I can provoke that. I almost want him to, this is bullshit, or something like that. So that I can say, it sounds like it. It sounds like bullshit. So I don't laugh when I say it, but I'm saying,
What are you talking about, Stephen? You laugh all the time in our therapy.
but not at you. I'm just saying, but I'm saying it sounds like bullshit. It really, really does.
Yeah.
Were you ever happy in your work? Did you ever have a calling to this? And here, where you don't have to be religious to work with me, but I can't help being a religious man. So there's an old saying in the Christian family: "Whom God calls, God equips. Whom God calls, God equips." Right? So one of the ways you have a vocation, a true calling in life, is even your bad days are pretty cool. Even the hard days, because you've been equipped to deal with this.
Hmm.
I mean, can you imagine how many times in a month, let alone a year, uh, somebody finds out what I do for a living and goes, I don't know how you do that. Man, listen to all those stories and domestic violence and child abuse, and I don't know how you do that. And I always say the same thing. Once, my darling wife asked me to buy a ceiling fan and to install it. Well, I bought the fan that she wanted. She looked around for several weeks and finally picked it out. I brought it home and got it out of the box. And about 2 hours later, she came in and I was in a fetal position on the carpet with parts scattered all over the place. She said, "What's wrong?" I said, I just, somebody did these instructions that just wanted to humiliate me. I have no idea how to do this. I don't know how." So she calls this handyman, and he comes over with his little truck, and he's got a ladder on his truck. He's got this little leather belt. He walks in and puts up his ladder and crawls up there. I don't know, 22 minutes. Turned on a button. It went round and round. It was perfect. And I was standing there looking at him, promise you, the same way people look at me.
Hmm.
I was like, I don't know how you do that every day, man. I don't. He does it because he knows how.
Yeah.
He does it because he can, right? I do what I do for a living because I can. Now, some people wake up in vocations and have to admit, maybe they were chasing the money, or maybe they were chasing their father's expectations. Maybe it wasn't a calling. And sometimes they wake up and then a friend or a therapist might help them just tell the truth about that. Hey, world, sorry. Sorry to waste everybody's time, but this isn't what I do. This isn't who I am. And this is where even a B plus wife can come in handy. Because I'm here to tell you, women
But
want us to. I'm saying a pretty good wife comes in pretty handy here, because women want a man to have a purpose,
hmm.
but they also want us to be happy in our work. There's not enough money in the world that can make a woman listen night after night to work sucks and this is stupid. And, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's,
What's the point?
what's the point?
Um, Another, and I've derailed us significantly here, but I mean, sorry, Stephen, this is how podcasting goes for me.
Yeah.
Um, the there is a sense sometimes of feeling, we talked about that word of feeling trapped. That if you could just break down that sense of being trapped, I think oftentimes that is it's a false narrative that we've constructed that's hiding some anger, like you said. And I was messaging a dentist just yesterday who he was like, "Man, I needed your program. I needed Next Level Fathers 3 years ago. I felt very trapped by dentistry." And he said, once I realized actually I could go do anything else I wanted to do, and if it didn't work out, then I could be a dentist as a backup, like worst case scenario, you still have a dental license. He's like, all of a sudden I didn't feel trapped anymore. It's like when I had to do this, it was a cage. And it was like, no, you can do whatever you want. And you can still pick up a handpiece and treat a patient and provide for your family if that doesn't work out. And then he's like, then I didn't feel like I needed to leave dentistry. And I think a lot of times the emotional pain stressors that we have, the answer might not be burn everything down and walk away.
No, no. Again, my first investigation is going to be, how have you gotten disconnected from your resources? What is sapping your psychic, emotional, and spiritual strength? Because 2 years ago you loved this practice, and not much has changed,
Right.
right? And so it's more likely that it's not the practice. It's much more likely that you've lost your bearings in some other thing that was resourcing your life force,
Yeah.
giving you strength and happiness.
Okay. So I want to go back to just recap because I do this on air all the time. If I can role play or remember or forget or show people not how to not do it, then maybe it'll help someone else. So the steps were, let me attempt here. Make the covert overt
Yes, sir.
first off. Then once someone actually overtly admits it, like say that they're really thinking about it, we then need to evaluate, is this at the stage of ideation? Is there a plan? Are there means? And if
And is there intent?
okay, so ideation and intent are two different.
A little different. Ideation is, ideation literally means I have ideas in my head about suicide. I'm thinking about suicide. I
Okay.
might not have any intent at all.
Okay.
I'm just
So
thinking.
so then ideation is like before intent. Ideation,
Yeah.
intent, plan, and then means. Means is kind of the like
Plan, means, intent, in that order. Plan, means, intent.
uh,
There are people who have a suicide plan and they have means, but no intent.
okay.
Like somebody who says, well, yeah, I don't know if you talk to your friends about the Enneagram. It's a way of understanding personalities. But there's a couple of personalities, type 8, type 4, that actually feel safe and secure just knowing that if it gets bad enough, I'm out. They don't have any intent to be out today, but there's, if it came to that, and in their mind, they see their plan, they see that they have means to that plan, they just don't have any intent.
Hmm. Okay.
It's still pretty scary. It's still a pretty scary way to live,
Yeah.
but there are people like that. And by the way, part of the intervention, if the plan and the means is accessible to you, that there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm following you home and you're going to give me your gun for a couple of months. No, really, that's what you're going to do. I'm following you home.
Or let's go dump those pills down the toilet or
Exactly.
dispose of them in whatever way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, great. So intervening with the means is a very concrete way to buy some
Absolutely.
space.
And strangely enough, well, then if you took his gun, he'd just stab himself with a knife. What's inexplicable about suicidal people is a suicidal person will tend to focus on one means.
Mm.
So you could put a bottle of cyanide, a knife, a rope, and a gun on a table, and this is a little exaggerated, but a suicidal person will kind of zero in on one of those things. And if you take that away from him, he won't say, well, then I guess I'll go to my second choice. Because there usually isn't a second choice.
Hmm.
There's just one perseveration. And if they can't get to that, you've bought a lot of time.
Hmm. Okay. So and if we've got all three, then plan, means, intent, then that is where it's very appropriate to call in some help and support
Yep.
for
Family, wife, if you have to, the police. I'm a big believer in verbal no suicide contracts. Um, Fred, the only way I'm getting in my car and going home is if you lean over this table and say, I can make a commitment not to kill myself tonight. You don't have to make one for tomorrow, but tonight. I need to hear your voice at 8 in the morning. I need to, if I'm going to go to bed, I need to go to bed and not wake up and have you dead. I need you to make that contract out of your mouth. I won't kill myself. No, no. I need to hear the words. I can make that commitment. It's a verbal contract. And then you better call him the next day. You better. How you feeling? Now, except for serious mental health issues like major clinical depression, the average suicidal episode for any of us is over as soon as it starts. I'm saying that if you can intervene, if you can do some of these things, oftentimes the next morning, Fred will answer the phone and say, I feel pretty foolish about what I said to you last night.
It tends to
And
be very
you say in a chipper voice, well, it was pretty foolish, dude. And I'm glad you know that. It just you're not judging.
yeah.
Right? You scared the shit out of me. That was really hard. And so I'm glad we both agree on that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're feeling better too. Now, how are we going to follow this up? How are we going to make sure you're not going to get back there? Resource.
So that's good to know. It is tends to be pretty acute. It's a crisis. With that, ironically, I just I happened to check earlier today. There's some comments on the YouTube video that we did before, and one of them was talking about the idea of guilt. We talked about kind of creating a narrative around guilt. But he said, for those with chronic suicidal tendencies that probably associated with, major mental health issues that aren't going away, he said the hard part is then when someone does lean out, because it is exhausting. It's hard. There's not an answer. It doesn't necessarily resolve with one acute episode and there's this satisfying ending. He's like, that's where the real guilt came in, is if it was just hard to be with this person and therefore we leaned away rather than leaning in. And so that's a lot to bring up here right at the end. I know we should probably wrap things up and I got to give you your evening back, but
no, I guess it depends on your individual worldview. Once you say to me, I'm going to kill myself, it really isn't time to be like, why did he pick me? I was going to meet a friend at a restaurant. The simple fact is it happened.
right.
And I really do feel bound at that point.
Yeah.
I feel morally bound to you now. In the same way, if you called me up and said, I'm thinking of killing my wife next weekend. Okay, I guess it was me that it was. And now I'm bound to that, right? And I can't let it go. I can't do nothing. I can't do nothing. I can't.
And I think this individual was talking about someone who this is every 3 months, every 6 months, every 12 months, every however long. And maybe that's what you just said just applies every single time that tap on the shoulder occurs. Is okay. This is my chance to step in and be there.
Now, for the serious mental health cases, then if 3 times in, you might want to consult an expert yourself, because, I don't mean to sound mean, but I don't know if I want to intervene with Fred every 3 months for the rest of my life in this neighborhood.
Right.
Right. And about the second or third time, I might bring in some big guns and say, I need not to be the one in this role. And I need to make sure somebody else is in this role.
Yeah.
So are we going to do this a third time with postvention?
I think we need to do postvention and grief, Stephen. I think both the postvention for the person who is able to come out of either an attempt or, this conversation that we had. But then for the individual who is a survivor of suicide and that grief process, I think that deserves a conversation. What do you think?
All right, let's schedule it. We'll do it again real soon.
Okay, Stephen, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you next time on the Next Level Dentist podcast.
Such a pleasure. Bye, Richard.